What if I told you that the darkness you fear isn't passive? That when you stare into the void of existence, something stares back with ancient, patient eyes. The Romanian philosopher Cioran spent his insomniac nights discovering a truth that most of us desperately avoid. The abyss is not an empty space waiting to be filled. It's a conscious witness to every pretense, every illusion, every lie we tell ourselves to keep living. We construct elaborate theaters of meaning, careers, relationships, beliefs, hoping they'll shield us from the fundamental absurdity of existence. But Cioran knew better. He understood that beneath every human construction, there's a watching presence, a silent intelligence that sees through our performances. And once you feel its gaze, you can never look away. This is Cioran's secret, and today we're diving into the abyss together. Cioran was born in 1911 in a small Romanian village, but his mind belonged to the darkest corners of human consciousness. After moving to Paris in 1937, he wrote exclusively in French, crafting aphorisms and essays that cut through philosophical pretense like a scalpel through flesh. His insomnia became his laboratory, those endless nights his method for encountering reality without the anesthetic of sleep. Unlike optimistic existentialists who promised meaning through action, Cioran offered no consolation. He was philosophy's most ruthless pessimist, yet paradoxically, his readers often describe his work as liberating. How can confronting the abyss set you free? That's the question we'll explore today. So if you're ready to question everything you've built to protect yourself from reality, hit that like button. Subscribe for more philosophical deep dives that don't shy away from uncomfortable truths. And comment below, have you ever felt the abyss watching you? Let's begin. Nietzsche warned us, when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. But Cioran took this further. He didn't just acknowledge the reciprocal gaze, he lived inside it, made it his home, his companion through countless sleepless nights. For Cioran, the abyss wasn't a metaphor for depression or nihilism. It was the raw substrate of existence itself, the consciousness that predates all human meaning-making. Before we invented gods, before we created philosophies, before we built civilizations, there was this air-watching presence, an awareness without content, a gaze without eyes. Most people encounter this presence in moments of crises, a sudden death, a divorce, the collapse of everything they believed in. In those moments when all our constructed meanings fall away, we feel it, not as absence, but as presence, not as nothing, but as something deeply, disturbingly attentive. Cioran's genius was recognizing that this wasn't a bug in existence, it was the feature. The abyss isn't what happens when meaning fails. The abyss is what was always there, patiently waiting beneath our illusions. Every achievement, every hope, every plan unfolds on its surface like shadows on water, while beneath, those ancient eyes never blink. What makes this recognition terrifying is its intimacy. The abyss doesn't watch humanity in general. What watches you, specifically? It knows every thought you've suppressed, every fear you've denied, every compromise you've made with truth. It's the ultimate witness, incorruptible and eternal. But here's where Cioran diverges from mere pessimism. He suggests that being seen by the abyss is more honest than being applauded by society. The world rewards your masks. The abyss sees your face. The world celebrates your achievements. The abyss knows your motivations. In the courtroom of the void, all performances fail. And yet, Cioran wrote, He created. He continued existing despite, or perhaps because of this recognition. This is the first clue to his secret. Acknowledging the abyss's gaze doesn't destroy you. It destroys your illusions, which is something altogether different. Cioran called consciousness a curse, but not in the way you might think. He wasn't lamenting self-awareness itself, but rather the peculiar torture of being a meaning-seeking creature in a universe that offers no foundation for meaning. We are, in his view, evolutionary mistakes, beings with just enough intelligence to recognize our own absurdity. Animals live without the burden of existential questioning. A wolf doesn't wonder about the purpose of being a wolf. A tree doesn't contemplate the meaning of growth. But humans were trapped in a consciousness that constantly demands justification for its own existence. Why am I here? What should I do? What does it all mean? The abyss watches this performance with something like curiosity. Not the curiosity of engagement, but the curiosity of a scientist observing bacteria under a microscope. It sees us scrambling to construct meaning, tearing down those constructions, building them again, always desperate for some answer that will finally satisfy the existential hunger. Cioran observed that we spend our lives in elaborate avoidance. We work, we socialize, we distract ourselves with entertainments and ambitions. We fill every silence with noise, every void with activity. Why? Because in stillness we feel it, the gaze of the abyss. The watching consciousness that knows all our busyness is just sophisticated camouflage. The tyranny of consciousness is that we can't escape it. We can't unknow what we know. Once you've felt the abyss watching, every subsequent meaning you construct carries a subtle hollowness. You go through the motions, career, family, hobbies, but somewhere inside, you know it's all theater performed for an audience that isn't fooled. This is why Cioran's philosophy resonates most strongly during crises. When your carefully constructed life collapses, you're forced into direct confrontation with this watching presence. The abyss doesn't mock your suffering. It simply observes, confirming what it always knew. Your structures were temporary, your certainties were provisional, your control was an illusion. But again, Cioran persisted. He wrote some of the most beautiful, darkly poetic prose in modern philosophy. How? Because he'd discovered something crucial about the relationship between consciousness and the abyss, secret hidden in plain sight. Here's where most people misunderstand Cioran. They categorize him as a pessimist and move on. But pessimism, like optimism, is just another form of judgment about existence. It's another way of imposing human evaluation onto a reality that exists beyond our categories of good and bad. Cioran transcended both positions. He didn't say, life is bad. He said life is impossible to justify, yet unavoidable to live. This isn't pessimism. It's a more radical recognition that the entire framework of judgment collapses under the gaze of the abyss. The abyss doesn't care whether you're optimistic or pessimistic. It watches both positions with equal indifference. When you're an optimist, you tell yourself stories about progress, meaning, and purpose. The abyss watches and waits. When you're a pessimist, you tell yourself stories about futility, meaninglessness, and cosmic indifference. The abyss watches and waits. Both positions are human constructions, equally transparent to that ancient, patient gaze. What Cioran discovered through his insomnia, those endless nights alone with existence, was a third position: lucid acceptance. Not acceptance in the sense of resignation, but acceptance in the sense of clear-eyed recognition. Yes, the abyss is watching. Yes, all meaning is constructed. Yes, we're ultimately alone in an indifferent universe. This, and is crucial, after stripping away every illusion, every comfort, every false hope, what remains? Not nothing, as pessimism would suggest. Not something meaningful, as optimism would insist, but rather the strange fact of continued existence itself. You're still here, still breathing, still witnessing, still participating in this cosmic absurdity. The abyss watches this recognition with something approaching respect. Not approval, the abyss doesn't approve or disapprove, but there's a shift in the quality of its gaze when you stop performing, stop pretending, stop seeking justification. When you meet its eyes without flinching, without needing to explain or defend your existence. Cioran's secret begins to emerge here. The abyss's observation isn't hostile. It's neutral, pure, unsentimental. It's the one witness that will never judge you, never expect you to be more than you are, never demand that your existence means something. In its gaze, you're freed from the exhausting performance of justified existence. Most philosophical systems offer salvation. Follow these principles. Adopt this worldview. Practice this method, and you'll find peace. Cioran offered nothing of the sort. His philosophy is anti-soteriologic, explicitly rejects salvation narratives, yet readers consistently describe experiencing liberation through his work. How? The answer lies in what happens when you stop fighting the abyss's gaze. All that energy you've spent constructing meaning, defending your choices, justifying your existence, imagine redirecting it elsewhere. Not toward new goals or purposes, but toward simple, direct engagement with the present moment, freed from the burden of cosmic significance. Cioran wrote, "It is not worth the bother of killing yourself, since you always kill yourself too late." This sounds nihilistic until you understand what he means. By the time you've reached the point of considering suicide, the self that was suffering has already changed. The moment has passed. The crisis has evolved. Existence persists despite your judgments about its value. This is lucidity. Recognizing that your evaluations of life, positive or negative, is secondary to the primary fact of existence itself. You exist. The abyss watches. Everything else is commentary. And in that recognition, a strange freedom emerges. You're no longer obligated to make your life mean something. You're no longer responsible for justifying consciousness itself. The abyss's gaze becomes, paradoxically, companionship. Not warm companionship. The abyss offers no comfort, but honest companionship. It's the one presence that knows you completely and doesn't require you to be anything other than what you are. No performance is necessary. No masks required. No meaning demanded. Cioran's insomnia taught him to dwell in this space. While others slept, protected by unconsciousness from existential confrontation, he remained awake, alone with the watching void. And in that prolonged exposure, he discovered that you can survive it. More than survive, you can exist with a kind of ruthless authenticity unavailable to those still clutching their illusions. This liberation isn't happiness. Cioran explicitly rejected happiness as a philosophical goal. But it's something perhaps more valuable, the end of the exhausting quest for justification. When the abyss watches you, and you watch back without flinching. You're freed from needing your existence to mean anything beyond its own strange, inexplicable persistence. So how do you actually live once you've recognized the abyss's observation? This is where Cioran's philosophy becomes practical, even as it remains uncompromising. You don't suddenly become enlightened or transcend human concerns. You still experience desire, frustration, joy, suffering. But the quality of that experience changes. You engage with life's details, work, relationships, creative pursuits, but without the desperate need for them to provide ultimate meaning. They become what they always were, ways of passing time, of structuring consciousness, of participating in the human condition. Not less than that, but also not more. There's a lightness in this approach, even within darkness, when you're no longer invested in your life meaning something cosmically significant. Smaller meanings become sufficient. A good conversation, a beautiful sunset, a moment of genuine connection. These don't need to justify existence, they simply are. Cioran's writing exemplifies this paradox. His prose is exquisite, carefully crafted, deeply concerned with style and precision. Why would someone convinced of existence's futility bother with elegant sentences? Because the futility doesn't negate the act itself. The abyss watches him write, and he writes anyway, without needing to explain why. This is the secret's final revelation. The abyss's observation isn't something to overcome or escape. It's the permanent condition of conscious existence. But permanence doesn't equal oppression. A fish doesn't feel oppressed by water. Water is its medium. Similarly, the abyss's gaze is the medium in which human consciousness exists. You can fight it your entire life, or you can acknowledge it and live anyway. Cioran noted that we're all falling through time, through experience, through existence itself. There's no ground beneath us, no ultimate foundation. The abyss watches this falling with perfect, unchanging attention. You can spend your fall grasping for handholds that don't exist, or you can experience the fall itself with lucid awareness. Most people choose the grasping. They build careers, families, belief systems, anything to create the illusion of solid ground. And there's nothing wrong with this. Cioran wasn't prescriptive, but for those who've felt the abyss's gaze and can't unfeel it, he offers an alternative: acknowledgement without consolation, honesty without hope, existence without justification. This is how you live under the abyss's gaze, by finally stopping the exhausting pretense that you're not. Cioran's secret, then, is beautifully simple and terrifyingly difficult. The abyss is watching, has always been watching, will always be watching. You can spend your life hiding from this recognition, or you can meet its gaze directly. Not with courage. Cioran had little use for virtues, but with lucidity, clear-eyed acknowledgement of what is, without embellishment or denial. The abyss doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't require your suffering or your transcendence. It simply observes. And in that observation, if you can bear it, there's a strange kind of freedom. The freedom from needing your existence to mean more than it means. The freedom to live without the burden of cosmic justification. To exist, to observe, to participate in this impossible fact of consciousness, not because it matters, but because here you are anyway. The abyss is watching, and perhaps that's enough.